Now we will learn how to do an assembly. To start an assembly, you have to go to New, and then instead of selecting Model, you need to click on Assembly and click OK. As you can see, the NX interface changed. Now you don't have any sketch or any feature like extrude or revolve. All you have is just the assembly. There are two ways to assembly. The first one is to combine existing parts together, which is called the bottom-up design, and the other one is to create new parts on the fly in the assembly. The one that we're going to be using is the bottom-up. It means that we're going to have all our parts prepared when we start doing the assembly. The first step before making an assembly is to put all the parts that you will be working on the same folder. This is really important. Otherwise, if you try to open your assembly, then you will not have all the figures and it will give you errors. So always try to make sure that all the parts are in the same folder. Now, we open the folder where we have all our parts. In this case, we only have three parts, one hinge, a second hinge, and one pin. We're going to add the first hinge, and we just click OK. It's really important that the first part of any assembly that you are doing must be positioning as the absolute origin, because over this part is where we are going to be adding the other parts. So always the first one has to be absolute origin. And we click Apply, as you can see here. Now we're going to add the second hinge. Here, instead of positioning as absolute origin, we're going to select by constraints. Constraints work exactly the same as if you were doing a 2D sketch. We click Apply, and then the Assembly Constraints menu will appear. If you want to see where the part that you just created is, what you have to do is go in Preview, click Preview Component in Main window. And it's exactly over the one that we just added as absolute origin. If you unclick, as you can see, it disappears this part. If you click again, then it will appear. Let's say that we select OK by mistake. What we will have to do is to just constrain to place the hinge where we want it to be. So in this case, we're going to select Cancel over here. Sometimes it's hard to place a part on an assembly even though if you're applying the correct constraints. For these cases, you will need to use a Move Component feature, which is over here. So you click the component and then you're going to select the parts that you want to move. For example, let's move hinge number 2, which is this one. Once you click this part, you have to go and click on a Specify Orientation, and a coordinate system will appear. This coordinate system will allow you to move in the X, Y, and Z direction that part, and also to rotate on the X, Y, and Z direction, as you can see here. This is only possible if you are not applying any constraints yet, otherwise it won't move. In this case, we want this hinge to be in the top of this other hinge. As you can see here, the part is placed almost as it should be on the assembly. So you just click OK. If you don't click OK, then whatever move you did to that part will disappear.
From here, we go to constraints, and then we're going to use touch align. There are other constraints such as concentric, distance, fixed, parallel, perpendicular, and they work exactly the same as the constraints when you are doing a 2D sketch. In this case, we're going to use touch align. This is the most common constraint because on the orientation, you can select touch, so both faces are touching each other, align, or invert center axis. We're going to select invert center axis first. We will need to select two objects. One object will be this hinge. So select the center axis you see is highlighted in red. And the other object will be the center axis of the other hinge. Now their center axis is similar. So we're going to add a touch. Now we're going to use a touch on orientation. So the face of one of the hinges is touching the other face of the other hinge. Like this. And then just click OK. So all your changes are saved.
If you want to see the constraint that you just applied to the model, you can always go to the Constraint Navigator. As you can see here, it shows the constraint that you have used in this assembly, and if you click this plus sign, it will show the parts that were involved in that constraint. Now we will add the pin to the hinge that we just assembled. So we go here to add component, and then we open the folder, click Hinge Pin. The positioning of this pin will be by constraint also. So we click Apply. Now we're going to place this pin over this hole. We can just touch a line, but we will be using another constraint. In this case, we're going to use concentric. So for concentric, we need to select two objects. So we're going to select the circle of this hinge with the circle of the pin. And it will look something like this. If for any reason you want to delete a constraint, you can always go to the Constraint Navigator and right-click over the constraint that you want to delete, and then just click Delete. To know if your assembly is correct, you can always go to Move Component, select one of the parts of the assembly, and then if you try to move that part, the whole assembly must move with that part. It shouldn't be separated. You see? Now the whole part is together.
Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe.